now we have important, maybe one of the most important parts of that conference, and a time for keynote speakers. And our first keynote speaker is Aideen Barry. Well, it's my duty to introduce her, but I think that she is so well known in Kauno that there is no need to introduce. But anyway, I will do some formalities and to say that she is an Irish artist based in Ireland, actually, but working everywhere in the world, and Kauno is included. And I would say she is one of the best interpreters of Kauno. Well, she is working in a wide variety of fields, including film, animation, sound installation, drawing, performance, sculpture, and probably more. So, and I should also mention that in 2020, she was elected as associate member of Royal Hibernian Academy. And if I would start to list her exhibitions works, so would end up in 1 hour probably, so I will not do this, but my personal touch would be to this, that I think that it's my personal opinion that her numerous work is a real great expression of social criticism and her strong personal stance. And for that reason, I think we are really happy to have her in Kauno, and she will tell us about the process of interpreting, about the process of filmmaking, and I hope at least part of you had the chance yesterday to see the premiere, but if you haven't, so you can check the Romuva cinema. It will be a possibility to see the film as well. So Aideen, welcome.
Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be back here again. Actually, I would say my first relationship with Kauno actually started here on this exact spot 4 years ago when I first visited the city, when I was invited by Vaidis and Vilta to give a paper on my work, which is social engaged practice, where I engage with communities to create a project, and that can manifest in many different ways. And I was invited here to speak about that work. But when I first came here, that time 4 years ago, my jaw hit the floor because I couldn't believe what such a beautiful city this was. And I was really embarrassed. And I am still really embarrassed to tell you I didn't know anything about Kauno, but I was absolutely blown away by the experience of the architecture and what an absolute jewel it is in Europe. So this led me to being invited by Vilta, the curator, to make my feature film, which was my metropolis. But I should tell you, like, when I was approached, I was asked to make a documentary, and I said, I can't really make documentary, I make more art film. And the curators of Kauno 2022 gave me carte blanche to kind of do whatever I wanted, as long as I activated the citizens and I talked about including their story in one way or another. So I have to give you a bit of a backstory. I am really interested in early cinema. So early cinema has had a big influence on me. But growing up in Ireland in the 1980s, what I was exposed to was actually film from Eastern Europe. So I'm just going to show you this. This is Jan Svankmajer, who's a Czech animator. This was shown on Children's TV Hour in the 1980s. These kind of animations, experimental films, and they thought this was film for children, but this is actually very political film that was censored under the Soviet era. And this style of stop motion animation came about as a kind of a way of talking about claustrophobia and about being censored, and that kind of art form went on to influence me. So this is Czech film. This Yuri Barta is actually Russian. and Esther Krumbakova is Czech. These are all stop motion animation styles that I saw as a kid. Now, if I were to show them to children now, I would be in trouble because they're really political and really inappropriate, but this is what I was exposed to. But you'll recognize the one on the left. This is Ladislav Starvich, which I was told was actually a Russian filmmaker, but soon discovered that he was a Lithuanian from Kauno. And this is early stop motion film made around that time of that interwar modernism. And it's using thousands and thousands of photographs to create the optical illusion of movement, a kind of a bit of magic. This film here on the right was a banned folklore film that was banned by the Soviets when Lithuanians wanted to talk about their folklore and their identity. And this was shown on Irish TV at that time. And all of this influenced my style. So when I was asked to make a film about Lithuanian interwar modernist architecture, I felt really unethical about doing so because I know nothing about interwar modernist architecture. And so I actually reached out through Vilta and the curators, through Ugna, through Gilvanas, and I said, can you put me in touch with a writer who could activate the community? So along came the fabulous Sandra Bernadetta, who you met last night if you saw the film premiere. And I asked her to work with the citizens to tell me the stories beyond the architecture. What is inside the walls? And I was thinking about how I would use those stories in the same way that Italo Calvino did in his Invisible Cities, where he told about the story of Marco Polo traveling to Kublai Khan with a city within a city within a city within a city. So Sandra came up with these amazing short stories through her workshops. Over 50 writers came and gave me the information that would become the screenplay from the film. So it was all the hidden histories, the Jewish architects who had been killed in the Holocaust, those academics and writers, those opera singers who'd lost their voice through the history and annals of time. All of that came through. Your pilots who traveled the world and whose bodies were hidden in the bowels of your medical school. All of that came through in these amazing short stories. And that's what became the screenplay, the storyboards for my animated film that I made in collaboration with the citizens. And what I also discovered was there were a lot of hidden histories about non-binary, non-heteronormative figures from that period. And it was important to visualize that in our contemporary world. So this is the amazing drag queen Alan Checo, who became one of the protagonists. This is Petrus Rimsha. My apologies if I'm murdering your names. I'm so sorry if I do this. And this is our interpretation of the amazing artist Petrus Rimsha, whose work is all around the city of Kauno. And of course, then I discovered you own Fluxus. I mean, how I didn't know this, I feel really embarrassed. So George Makunis became a figure to interpret and cite within the modernist architecture. And we gave him a backstory to show how he got his black eye. And then, of course, as an Irish person, I mean, we were one of the earliest to convert to Catholicism, but you took a lot longer. And I was quite interested to find out how your relationship with the devils, and even in visual culture, for example, the Devil's Bride was a really important identity for who you were. And I thought this was a character that I needed to build or bring out from the walls of the architecture too. So your devils, especially from the Devil's Museum, which is an absolutely incredible piece of architectural heritage and collection of art I've ever seen. And then we also included the stories of the contemporary and the future of Kauno modernism through The Beast, which is this protagonist who was created by the Kauno 2022 writers to kind of activate and inspire the next generation of, I suppose, architectural enthusiasts. Another thing that was really important to do was to recognize that we're not homogenous in our identities. And actually, the identity of Kauno is very multicultural, from your Sugihara to you being the petty Paris of the East, where there were jazz bands would fly in from New York and play here between 1919 and 1939. So it was really important in the film that we represented that multiculturalism, and also that we captured the very beautiful story of Sugihara, who saved 6,000 Jewish citizens by converting them into Japanese citizens just before the outbreak, really, or in around the early parts of World War II. So our Sugihara is Natsu, who is actually a Japanese dancer based in Aura Dance Theatre. And I met these amazing artists. I invited them to be part of the project. And Natsu turns the passports into tiny little origami cranes, which became a symbol of hope. And I could see this happening while I was here. The Belarusians were dropping Iraqi citizens at your doorstep. And while I was here over those 2 years making this film, I saw that same symbol coming up again and again, and how you opened up your doors and you welcome strangers in the same way you're doing it to Ukrainian citizens now. And I felt this was really important to enshrine this in the contemporary when I was interpreting the whole experience of the film. Okay, so this is Kaunas modernism. So we actually used this, I worked with a local DOP. I actually had a whole film crew, but the main thing that upset the apple cart really was the pandemic hit, and I had to find a young DOP very quickly, Mika Sabaluinis, who came on board as my DOP, and we became a great partnership in making the film. But also the pandemic hit right at the middle of the very beginning of the start of this project. And my whole aspirations for how I was going to interpret your architectural heritage changed. And yet at the same time, the city was built out of the back of a cholera epidemic. So I thought this symmetry was really important. So I undertook tours via Zoom, and I led thousands of workshops with thousands of Lithuanian citizens from your house and my house, with my kids and your kids, teaching stop motion techniques. This is in the height of the pandemic, before even there'd been any inoculations or anything. We made a whole series of stop motion animations with young children in primary schools and secondary schools all around the city. So we used this kind of model of the exquisite corpse, which the surrealists use, of turning one favorite interpretation into another. Pick your favorite building and turn it into your favorite object. And that's where this early stage of the filmmaking process came about. And this is from my home in Tipperary, where I was teaching. I think we had 800 people on the other end of a Zoom call, teaching them how to do a stop motion animation with my kids and my family and your kids and your family while we were all in lockdown. And it just inspired so many people to get involved in the whole process. We also worked with Lithuania Con. We went everywhere all over this country, inspiring people to get involved in the making and to hone skills from emerging generations. At one point in the workshops, I showed them people the Oscar Schniedermeyer's Bauhaus Ballet. So this is actually a dance interpretation of an architectural style. And I showed how the costumes had come to life, and they were like a different kind of language was forming between architectural heritage and a different art form like dance. So I asked people, at the time there was a 3-kilometer radius that you were not allowed leave. So I asked the citizens to pick your favorite modernist building and come up with a costume design that you would then perform in. And then from that, they directed me via Zoom to make my own stop motion animations wearing some of their costume designs while they were planning their own. This was directed by a group of 13-year-olds, me wearing Elena House, which is a real favorite of everybody. But that went on. This is what the kids made, which was so magic. So this is them wearing your architectural heritage. Look at that. It's not just magical. And then I met Chris Baldwin, who was the director of the opening ceremony. And he was so inspired by what happened in those workshops that it went on to influence the costumes that were worn by Aura Dance Theatre and performed to an audience of 2.5 million Europeans. That all came from those workshops with kids. Woo is right. Check it out. This is me on January filming it all. So emotional, crying, big panda eyes, ugly crying at how emotional I was. We also projected some of those animations from the workshops and from the film onto the buildings. But I have to tell you, I mean, if you've been at the opening last night, you'll learn that I have a real passion for cake, like you Lithuanians have a passion for cake. When I first came here, one of the workshops, I discovered that I asked a question about what is the common denominator? What is the one piece of TV program that everybody in Lithuania loves? And I was told the Great British Bake Off. And I thought, okay, this is gold. We're going to interpret the modernism as an edible thing. We're going to get people to make their modernist cakes. So I worked at these, like, I have to tell you, I'm from a working class background myself. So getting people from working class backgrounds involved in artistic production and interpretation, democratizing the access, democratizing a sense of ownership about an art production is actually really important and close to my heart. So these amazing young women created 6 gorgeous modernist cakes, which became the props for our film Clostus. This is them making it up in the catering college just on the outskirts of Kauno. And not only did they make the most gorgeous modernist cakes, this one, Čiurlionis Museum, got into the Guinness World Book of Records as the largest modernist cake ever made. Right? Amazing. But we use them in our film as these kind of chapter points. So actually as you enter into the modernism, you enter through a restaurant and into a cake. And we had much fun eating a lot of this cake, as you can imagine. So there was actually so many, so you see the film, but actually there were so many, there was a rhizome, like Deleuze and Guattari. There was a rhizome of different interpretations and projects that grew tentacles. So I reached out to a number of local artists in particular, because I am Irish, and actually in 2020, Galway was the European Capital of Culture. And Vilta told me that they had been approached by a filmmaker in Galway who I knew very well, Julian Dorger, to equip a whole load of experimental filmmakers based in Kauno with Super 8 cameras. And I thought, oh my God, this is so exciting. We can have several film projects on the go. So we did a series of workshops with Super 8 film with these amazing experimental filmmakers. These are amateurs. A lot of them are even art students. Some of them are secondary school students. Some of them don't even describe themselves as artists. And they made these absolutely beautiful 8mm and 16mm films. I'm just going to try and play some of the audio with this. And this was shown in Galway in the Palace Cinema as part of Galway 2020, the European Capital of Culture. So this is a partnership between Galway and Kauno. And we described this in the same way as I'd done the workshop with the kids. It was an exquisite corpse. So at the very end of each film, somebody had to end with an architectural, I suppose, vignette of a circle, because it's everywhere in your modernist style. So each film would flow into each other in the same way Clostus does. So it was presented on a reel. So you see these reoccurring circular motifs all the time, but you see it everywhere all around the city. So it was kind of a natural progression. But it's also kind of timeless. It's almost when you look at the style, you can't actually position what time period this is. Anyway, very beautiful, and it will be screened again, I promise. So these are all of my amazing actors. Everybody here is from this city, and they all gave their time. 70 actors in all gave their time to shoot and to behave in this really awkward way. I mean, the reason I worked with these amazing dancers from Aura and Nepto is because dancers have this physicality. And when you talk about the construction of this film, it's thousands and thousands of photographs. So you require a dancer to really hold their form for quite a long time while you're taking photograph. It's a labor of love, but everybody was so accommodating. And this is my extraordinary team. And you will see that it's quite female heavy because I'm an unapologetic feminist and not many women are working in the film industry. It was really important to get as many women working in within the whole project. And these are the amazing buildings that we shot in. And all the time while shooting, when we were working with the citizens, we were showing them what we were doing. We were consulting with them how they felt we were representing their stories. So it was enfranchising the communities to be part of every single directorial edit, every single decision that was going into the making of the film, that their stories were being shown. So this story actually that I'm showing here, this little clip is, for example, it's from the Ninth Fort, which obviously is not modernist, but obviously is rooted in that great tragedy that happened in 1939 when the Nazis invaded. And this amazing public art piece that was introduced by Laura and Maxime when I first met them here 4 years ago. They brought me out to this amazing monument, and I felt this is perfect for animation. We're going to actually really reconsider how it was actually built, because it took 35 years to make. And I am going to do it in miniature, and it also nearly killed me, like it nearly killed the artist that made it. And also another really important part was it's a non-verbal film. So it's a completely non-verbal film because actually the main protagonist is the architecture. And I wanted the architecture to be the only one with the sound. So I worked with these two amazing local composers, and I asked them to come up with the scores that I would then use into the film. So this is Patrice and Arunas, sorry. And this young 17-year-old Yeva Rabuta, who I commissioned her to actually respond in particular to the Holocaust and kind of Soviet era themed work, which is quite dark, but I also was very interested in hearing how that young generation would interpret this really sad part of history. So this entire composition is made by an 18-year-old who's now studying musical composition in Vilnius. Okay, I'm going through here, lightning speed here, sorry. Another really important part to tell you, because a lot of the labor you don't see, but every single part of this film was silent, and all of the sounds that you hear in the cinematic experience are all foleyed afterwards. That means each sound is added afterwards. So every surface, every architectural surface that's touched or walked on or squeezed or folded into each other, that is all added afterwards in post-production. And a lovely circular thing happened. So I told you I started with this influence of Eastern European film or Baltic film. Well, I discovered there was this amazing Lithuanian Foley artist based in the same studio that Jan Svankmajer made his films that influenced me. So I traveled to Prague to work with Dominika, and she Foleyed every single sound that you see.
Okay, let's try.
So I'll just show you what that means. So modernism is interpreted in a very physical way, in many different ways, with these amazing people that I worked with. And then we add all those sounds afterwards. We worked with this great sound designer here, and also Matas from Vitas Maximus University, who helped with recording some local sounds. And that was all added in post-production. So it was a solid 2-year project of building it all together like a tapestry, or weaving it all together like a tapestry. And now I'm very happy to tell you that Clostes is traveling the world. It has gone to almost every continent, and your heritage is being represented everywhere. So there won't be people like me who didn't know about Kaunas, because it's going everywhere. It's becoming a different kind of virus. It is going viral. This week alone, it's getting its US premiere at the Newport Beach Film Festival, which is an Oscar-nominating film festival in California. It's also going to be premiered in Mexico, in Oaxaca Film Festival, and it's traveling all over Europe and the world. And I'm so very proud of this amazing project and to have worked with you collectively to make this amazing film. And I'm going to end with the trailer from the film for you to be able to see this in the local cinema, Remuva. It's on until the 24th. Oh, and it stopped playing, sorry. Sorry about that, it just stopped playing, but I'll try and play it later on. Thanks very much, thank you.
Thank you, Aideen. Such an incredible work and such an incredible amount of human effort. And well, it's one part is a film as a production, and obviously it's have its own life and it's important, but somehow just when I sitting and listening to you, I think it's a so powerful tool of education, not just interpretation, but education. And I almost envied those kids who had workshops, and somehow I think it's so sad if it ends up, and I would expect to have each year new series of this one, and to have like 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, because it's education. I'm not sure which is more important, either the product or either the process. So thank you so much, Aideen. It's a real impressive example of interpretation on what we talk here, and what is the aim of our program and our conference as well.